All right, we are less than 10 days away from National Signing Day in college football. Mark Rogers TV trying to find out what could be the Mark Richt effect at the University of Miami, and the best way to do that is bring in Cam Underwood from the State of the U to talk up the Canes recruiting class. Cam, it's always a pleasure to have you in, and you're a little under the weather, so we appreciate you grinding this thing out. So it wasn't an issue with Al Golden bringing in top talent. I assume it's not an issue this offseason as well. Who are some of those guys that you're really amped up about and the fan base is looking forward to seeing come into the fold?
Well, yeah, always good to be here. I'm recovering from a cold a little bit, so I'm a little bit nasal, but I'll fight through, so it's okay. We take no days off. We're hurricane tough, so always good to talk some recruiting. I love following this stuff. I don't know why. First of all, if you're talking about the guys who are coming into this class or onto the roster for this year, you have to start with our 5 early enrollees. Quarterback Jack Allison, the quarterback. You have to have a quarterback in every class in recruiting, and you need a good quarterback. And Jack Allison is a good quarterback. He's 6'5", probably closer to 6'6". He's rail thin, 190 pounds maybe, but he has a huge arm, and he needs to develop the ability to, to vary his speeds on his pitches, as it were. When he went to the Under Armour All-American game, the coaches said, he loves his fastball because he wants to sit there and just rip it every time, hard as you can, but you need a little touch sometimes. You have to, the intermediate throws don't necessarily need to be done as hard as possible. So those are things that he can develop over the course of a redshirt year, because he's not going to play this year, and that's perfectly fine. So 2017 and after is really when he's going to have his impact or ability to be that impact player, but very good talent. Defensive end Patrick Bethel, his father went to Miami. It was Randy Bethel, played on 2 of the national championship teams in '89 and '91. He was a tight end. He's another 4-star kid out of the Vero Beach area. Early enrollee, also Under Armour All-American. He won't be a day one kind of impact guy. He'll probably redshirt also. But 2-3 years down the road, he can be a very good player for us. At the linebacker position, we have 3 guys who are coming in: Shaq Quarterman, Zach McLeod, and Michael Pinckney. I think that is personally, as of right now, the best trio of linebacker recruits in America in any class. Now, people are talking about, LSU might bring in 4 linebackers, or Auburn, or whoever. Yeah. But as a group of 3, this is the best group of 3 that there is. Zach McLeod, I think, is a star. Shaq Quarterman is a star. He had the most tackles in the U.S. Army All-American game. I think he had 6 or 7 tackles there. So he's a very good player. So all 5 of our early enrollees, obviously on campus already, in classes and in the weight room. Those guys are going to be impact kind of guys either this year or for the linebackers. I think 2 of those 3 are going to play this year. And, Bethel, he might not play. He might need a year. And Jack Allison, he definitely needs a redshirt year. I don't want to see anything about him hitting the field at all this season. So, that's a good start for us with the guys coming in. On top of that, you add in Travis Homer, a running back out of West Palm Beach. Very, very good talent. He had one of the highest Spark scores for athleticism training or rating. Last year was invited to the opening, and he's just super fast, 5'11", 195 pounds, and if he gets a seam, he's gone. So, love having that kind of a back. And he might be the only running back in this class, but when you have, the guys coming back on our roster, Joseph Yearby, Mark Walton, Gus Edwards, Trayon Gray, in front of him, and you can accept having only one for the 3rd year in a row, when the last 3 years it was Joseph Yearby in 2014, Mark Walton in 15, and then Travis Homer this year. So, you would like to have more than one in this class, especially because the top end guys, Yearby could go next year. Gus Edwards will probably go next year. But having one, that's somebody, Travis Homer, who I like a lot. Rising up in a lot of people's eyes, but always been very, very stout in my eyes, is Tyler Byrd, a cornerback out of Naples, Florida. He's a dynamic player. If you watch the U.S. Army All-American game, he blocked an extra point, danced, looked down, picked up the ball, and then ran back 95 yards the other way. And he's just, making play. Had an interception in the game, had a pass breakup, had a forced fumble, I want to say, in that game. Also, dynamic, multifaceted player, very athletic, very underrated, too. I mean, he's borderline 3-4 star, probably a solid 4-star now, but he could come in and start from day one. But we'll talk about him a little bit later, I do believe. And then the other guy who I'm really excited to see coming into this class is defensive end Joseph Jackson out of Miami, Gulliver Prep, same school that Sean Taylor went to. And by the way, 6'5", 245 pounds. At the high school level, kids of that size and his athleticism, he played both ways, played defensive end and tight end. But at this level, he's going to be a defensive end. And with our new defensive line coach, Craig Kuligowski, who's at Missouri. So all those guys from Missouri who were in the league, all those first-round draft picks, Alden Smith and Coney Ely and, Michael Sam was SEC Defensive Player of the Year. All that development was under Kuligowski's, Coach Cool with the K. Coach Cool, he was the one who trained all those guys up. So you bring in a kid like Joseph Jackson, who's unblockable at the high school level, to work with Coach Cool, he's hitting the field this year.
Yeah, and most recently coming out of Mizzou, Marcus Golden, who should be a pretty good player as well. All right, Cam, we're coming down the home stretch. Who are some of those guys that are kind of dangling out there, haven't really given us a good lead on where they're leaning at this point, and may have 3 or 4 schools listed? And if you get those guys, it's a really good class.
Miami is really looking at a lot of different guys, and that's to be expected with a completely new coaching staff. There are no holdovers from Al Golden's staff. And so Larry Scott, the interim head coach, was offered the wide receiver position coach job, declined that, and he's coaching tight ends, which he was coaching here at Tennessee now. So he was offered a job here. Kevin Byrd, the old wide receivers coach, was offered that job later in the process, but that was kind of rescinded because there was conversations about that. He interviewed for that job, but we got Ron Dugans to come over. So an upgrade at that position. And I think that Kevin Byrd is going to be a great coach. I know him personally. I know a couple of his family members. He's the homeboy, and everything. And I wish him well. But just looking at it, Ron Dugans has been doing this a long time, coaching at this level, developing talent. That's an upgrade. So across the board, all new coaches, no assistants were held over or anything. So the board is shifting. The board is changing. One of those kids who is still on our board from previously and now is Amon Richards from West Palm Beach, Wellington, city that he lives in. That's the high school that he went to as well. 4-star wide receiver, one of the best, most dynamic wide receivers in America. He was committed to Miami, decommitted around that Clemson game that got Al Golden fired thing, and has been, evaluating his options. Auburn is up there for him. Alabama also up there for him. He's actually currently still in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, wrapping up his official visit there right now. That is the biggest competition for Miami, it seems, for Amon Richards. So if he gets through that visit and doesn't commit, or is it, a silent commit, or really like, okay, yeah, I think it's going to be Alabama. If he's not very effusive about that, Miami could be in a very good space with him. So that's somebody that we're obviously looking at to bring in. There aren't many uncommitted guys that we're looking at. There's a couple. Shaheem Carter, All-American defensive back from Louisiana, who, again, is thought to be going to Alabama, but that's been a long-standing thing in his recruitment. But he's uncommitted, so that's a guy. And another one who's on campus, or 2 who are on campus for us right now, 3 actually, sorry, Marcel Southall, from Texas, a defensive tackle, and Miami needs those desperately. His one. Giovanni Haskins played high school quarterback. He's from New Jersey. He's 6'5", 235, 240. So he profiles as a big wide receiver / slot tight end thing, kind of in the David Njoku role for Miami. He's uncommitted. And then Lucas Niang from Connecticut, 6'7", offensive tackle. Those are some of the uncommitted guys who were down here for their visits. But really, it's keeping guys in our class, like a Tyler Byrd, who's being recruited by Tennessee and is going to visit there next week, like a Sam Bruce, who has been our #1 recruit ranking-wise, but linked heavily with Ohio State as a possible flip location. If you look on 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball, they do predictions for where the recruits are going to go. Like the last 14 of those have been for him to go to Ohio State. And I guess I'll stop and talk about that for a second. He's been around the recruiting process for many years. Sam Bruce has been an elite player for a long time. One of his good friends is Jordan Scarlett, who was committed to Miami and then flipped at the last minute to Florida last year. So he's been around. He's seen that. Also, I spoke about Kevin Byrd previously, our old wide receivers coach. Kevin Byrd coached Sam Bruce for the first 2 years of his high school career when he was at university school. So he has a personal connection with them. It's like a second dad mentor kind of thing. Very, very close connection with Sam Bruce and Kevin Byrd. So Sam Bruce has said, I'm committed to the university. I'm not committed to a single coach. But then he's also said, if KB isn't there, then that'll be a factor in my recruitment. So he's kind of talking out of both sides of his face. And I get it and I understand it. So I don't hold any animosity to the kid, but he's definitely now really seriously evaluating his options. So he was going to go to Florida on a visit this week, Sam Bruce was. Florida figured they weren't going to get him. So they were like, we're going to cancel that, go somewhere else because you're not actually going to come here, so bye. And maybe, I don't know what the connection is with Jordan Scarlett on their roster right now. Maybe they got some read from him. They just said, yeah, Sam Bruce, stay away. So Sam Bruce actually moved up his official visit from next week to this week at Miami. So he's there right now. And, it's a dicey kind of a thing because, you want to keep the top-rated guy in your class, but also, there's a million the receivers we're looking at. I've written about this on the site where, we've offered 12 recently. We've had 9 on campus in the first 2 weeks of official visits since the dead period ended. So something like that, keeping Tyler Byrd in the class, maybe flipping a guy like a Bryson Guidry, a defensive tackle who's committed to Arkansas, and Arkansas's defensive line coach just went to the NFL. So we're like, hey, you want to go play for him, but he's not there. We got Kuligowski here. He's put guys in the league. Come on down. And that kid visited last week. So there's not a lot of uncommitted guys who we're going after, but as I think the last 4 minutes of me rambling has shown you, there's a lot going on.
No, I love it. I love it. Learned a lot there. You covered a ton of ground. So this next question might be null and void, but if there's anybody under the radar that's not getting a whole lot of attention, that maybe through conversations that you've had on social media, maybe some clips you've seen from high school that you like.
I'm going to say again, I really like Joseph Jackson. I really like Joseph Jackson. I think that he's the best commit that nobody's talking about for Miami. He's a dynamic player, and I really expect big things out of him as we move forward. In the class for commits, it's really him and Zach McLeod, who, while being a 4-star, I think is underrated in my personal opinion. One of our most recent recruits, Latrell Williams from Lake City, Columbia High School. A late rising player. Lake City's in a weird place in Florida, so it's not really heavily recruited because it's tough to get there. So unless you already know of a kid, you're not really going to make that venture out there kind of a thing. But he had like 70 catches for 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns and a bunch of kick return touchdowns this year. The kid has like legit 4.35 speed. I mean, you watch the highlights of the first 2 plays, I had to rewind it just again and again. It's his speed pops off the field. I mean, it pops off the screen to you. And he's actually on an official visit to Tennessee. But that's a kid right there. When we offered him, he was committed to USF, where Ron Dugans was wide receivers coach. Ron Dugans comes to Miami. Latrell Williams decommits, takes a visit, and then commits. So, following the coach kind of a thing. And I understand that. He was like a 2-star recruit. People were like, oh, who's this kid? Who's this kid? Eyes got on his highlight film, and then I said from the first time I saw his highlight, if he was from South Florida where I live, it was from, Miramar or Carroll City or Miami Central or whoever down here, that's a 4-star kid. Everybody in America is chasing after this kid if he was in a bigger location. And the rankings have actually started to back that up. On ESPN, he's up to a 4-star. 24/7 Sports is raising him up. Rivals, Scout, they're all rising him up their rankings because people are getting eyes on his highlight film and saying, whoa, wait, this is not a 2-star kid. And his offer list with Miami and Tennessee and USF and a couple other Power 5 schools, that backs it up that this is not a 2-star kid. This is not just a end of the roster filler at some Division III school. No, this is a kid who can come here or anywhere and play, especially on special teams from day one. So that's a guy that I really like who's in our class. For the guys that we're going after, we're going after guys who are committed to some really good schools. Eli Stove is a wide receiver who's committed to Auburn that we're going after. Isaiah Chambers was an All-American, and he's actually on a surprise visit. He's, because things are fluid. So you're like, okay, we know these are the guys who are going to visit. And all of a sudden, a picture of him pops up on campus. And you're like, oh, my goodness. And that's actually what happened with Bryson Guidry last week. So Isaiah Chambers, a defensive end, a top 130 player in the class, committed to TCU. He's a guy that we're after. Randricus Davis, with an amazing name, Randricus, committed to Georgia, has a big G tattoo on his left bicep, but he's probably going to flip from Georgia to Miami on his official visit this weekend. Christopher McWilliams is committed to Florida. Henry Miller is committed to Pittsburgh. Javon Wims is committed to Georgia. Bryson Guidry, like I said, committed to Arkansas. And Nate Johnson committed to Michigan. considering Michigan, Miami, and Notre Dame. This is top three. So there's a lot going on. Not many uncommitted guys, but they're basically all uncommitted to us because the coaching staff is new. We're trying to build something. So, there's a lot of guys that we're going after. And even in the next, 10 days between now and signing day, I guarantee you there's going to be even more new names on top of what I've said that pop up on the radar as we try to fill this class.
Cam Underwood joining us from the State of the U, of course, with Al Golden as the head coach. Recruiting was never really the issue. They weren't elite top of the nation classes, but they were top 15 to 20 classes under Al Golden, even when the program was in trouble. That said, obviously the product on the field wasn't what it was anticipated to be. Now with Mark Richt running the show, I know this is going to be an easier question to answer after National Signing Day, but at this point, do you see a difference in the way the recruiting process is being run?
I definitely see a difference in the way that it's being run, and I also see a difference in the way that Miami is being received, especially from the premier recruits, the Shaheem Carters of the world, who Miami was talking to, again, Shaheem Carter, All-American out of Louisiana, defensive back, going to come. He's going to start. Well, I'm not going to say he's going to come here, but he's going to step in and probably play heavy rotational snaps next year as a freshman. And Miami was, contacting him throughout the process. It was like, yeah, I like Miami. We'll see. Boom. Mark Richt gets hired. Official visit on the books. Done. Those kind of things. You're in the conversation with the Glenn Logan, defensive tackle, who's committed to LSU. He was going to come here. Then, recruiting happened, and he got solidified to his LSU commitment, and he canceled his official visit here. But that's a high-ranking 4-star guy. Isaiah Chambers, like I just said, all these other big national guys are now actually taking Miami seriously. Not just, okay, they're, close to home. There's, Tracy Howard was a 5-star coming out of Miramar High School. Duke Johnson should have been a 5-star, but was a high 4-star coming out of Norland. Those guys locally, you're going to get some of those. But the thing is getting a larger share of those going forward. So I think that Mark Richt gives credence and just believability to the staff, just automatic respect for Miami. So I think that is playing out. And if you talk to the younger kids, I went to a couple 7-on-7 tryout events and things. You talk to the younger classes, 2017, 18, and so on. It's, oh yeah, I'm actually talking to Miami, or I saw they did this, or they're making moves, and obviously you get a bump when you have a coaching change. But I think that just the credibility of not only Mark Richt, but every single coach that he's brought on, that is just it's helping things in a big way. So you're going to see some of the more connection with the bigger guys, even like I said, some of the flips going to the end of the 2016 cycle. But where this is really going to be fleshed out is going forward. In his 15 years at Georgia, 9 times Mark Richt had a top 10 class. And there was a bunch of classes that were 11th or 12th or 13th. And Al Golden's average was 11th. And look, that's our average recruiting class over a 5-year span was higher than Clemson's, and Clemson played for a national championship and blew us out by almost 60 points. So the talent is not really the big disparity. It's obviously the coaching and on field. So if we're already recruiting to an 11th kind of an average, there's no reason why the roster can't improve. And if you're wondering, or for more about that, I actually wrote a piece about this about a week and a half ago on the State of the U, looking at the roster that Mark Richt built at Georgia and what the standard of talent was there and what it is here at Miami and how long that gap could be bridged. I won't give you away the answer because I want you to go read it, but the State of the U, the piece is called Rebuilding the U. If you want to go see it, took a look at just what we're talking about. So, this year, there's going to be some payoff, but 2017, 18, and beyond, that's where the real recruiting benefit is going to come. Especially,
I will definitely give that a look because I cannot focus on all these recruits scattered all over the country. But when somebody can give a real perspective on a recruiting process, that's great stuff. And I know that you can do that. You cram in Cam 60 minutes of information into 20 minutes. Give us all the names, the scouting reports, plus the narratives and the storylines and some cute little stories on the side. Plus you give us the whole perspective from the tree top perspective of the program. So I don't know how you do it, but this is why I have you on. This is good stuff. So Cam Underwood, the State of the U. It's always a good time. Thanks for coming on, Cam.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And we already have a story stream up on the website. So all of the things that I'm doing, all the recaps and all the articles and, you know, different things about recruiting right there on the front page in one place for you. So you can get caught up on the Rebuilding the U article and all the other commentary and things that I've done. You know, and I just read a lot about recruiting and it just kind of goes. So I could go for even more. Trust me, I'm just touching the surface, but always good to be here and love to talk recruits.
Good stuff. Thanks, Cam.
See ya.